want to talk for about an hour on the last topic, the last essay topic, which is Russia-China energy. Very important issue and very relevant to today's policy debate in this region, Asian region, but also I think globally. Global energy issues now I think one way or another I think involve this Russia-China natural gas agreement, which was signed May 21st. So the question I'm asking here, what's the significance of it, right? What's the background against which Russia-China, why so many people, why so many countries, analysts, they are so excited or either worried, right? Worried about a disagreement between Russia and China. What is behind it, right? Why is it so important? Is it really important, right? How much substance we have to give to this historic, let me say, historic natural gas agreement between Russia and China? Yeah, that's the question posed. In terms of how you answer this question, this requires a lot of, I think, previous readings, studies. But I want to give you some, like a synopsis of this natural gas debate, Russian energy, Russia-China energy relations, Asian energy. This is about Asian energy. You need to understand the structure of Asian energy politics. But Asian energy politics is, connected to European energy politics. And again, I think this is an outcome of shale revolution, right? North American shale revolution. I think that brought this historic agreement. Then how U.S. shale revolution brought this Russia-China agreement. Shale revolution, we had some discussion about that. And the implication of shale revolution, it's more liberalized natural gas market, right? I emphasize that. More liberalized natural gas market due to U.S. shale revolution. So that monopoly structure of the conventional natural gas market is likely to be, right, crumbling down due to U.S. shale revolution. That's one, I think, huge impact of U.S. shale revolution. Monopoly structure of global natural gas market is crumbling down. Pricing mechanism is changing. Natural gas pricing mechanism is changing. Conventional pricing mechanism was based on P&G agreement. Mostly conventional old natural gas contracts were based on pipeline supply, right? Pipeline supply, P&G, right? And prices are long-term agreement, long-term agreement. And prices are higher than the real cost, right? It was a supplier's market rather than buyer's market, right? The old conventional natural gas market was supplier's market, was not buyer's market, right? Suppliers benefited more. Suppliers control, they had a control over prices, right? So buyers, because they needed natural gas so so much, right? So they paid whatever price they have to pay. That's the market structure. Right? Russia benefited hugely from this old monopoly market. Right? That's how Russia survived in this old natural gas market. And the new biggest player also was Qatar in the old natural gas market. But Russia was PNG power, PNG supplier mostly, pipeline-based supplier, Russia, right? But Qatar, in the Middle East, Qatar was LNG power. Qatar doesn't provide any PNG. Qatar mostly 100% LNG. Right? So the market, old natural gas market, was divided between Russia PNG, Qatar LNG. This was the old market structure. Russia natural gas went to Europe mostly, not Asia. I'm talking about old structure. Under the old structure, European countries, they are the main customers of Russian PNG, Russian natural gas. This is most important characteristic of the old natural gas market. Europeans are strategically, right, quote unquote, strategically dependent on Russian PNG. This is most outstanding character of old natural gas market. Europeans dependent on Russian PNG supplies. Right? I think this is having a huge impact now on, after shale revolution, this Russia-European dependence, interdependence, is undergoing revolutionary changes due to U.S. shale revolutions. That's why you see Ukrainian crisis. Ukrainian crisis, right? Russian soldiers are stationed there, right? Ukrainian crisis is about this shift in Russian-European natural gas relations. Because Ukraine is the transit, most important transit country between Russia and Europe. Right? When Russia exports natural gas, must pass Ukraine. Right? So Ukraine is in between Europe and Russia. So this old structure, Russia PNG, European dependence, Ukraine as transit, right? These are all, right, past characteristics. All these characteristics are changing under shale system, right? So Russia, US, they're competing, right, to jockey for, right, power in the new energy system. Right? Russia is in danger. That's the threat of shale revolution for Russia. Now, so this old structure, America is trying to break up this old structure. No doubt Russia is trying to maintain this old structure. This is the nature of this Russian-American conflict. Over Europe. Now, let's turn our attention to Asia. While these US-Russian or European conflicts are being waged under shale revolution, then what's going on in Asia? Right? Why Russia and China suddenly came to this historic natural gas agreement? What's the connection between this European front and this Asian energy front? This is the next question. I think you need to discuss this because this is the most important nexus between European energy politics and Asian energy politics. Now, the way things are moving to the Asian front is that you have this European conflict, right, between Russia and America and European countries. Then Russia, to escape disadvantages from the European front, right? Russia is surrounded now. Russia is surrounded by European countries, America, right, on natural gas. So Russia is in danger. So Russia, to escape these disadvantages, Russia turning attention to the Asian front. That's how things are moving to the Asian front. Then how? Russia is losing market in Europe, right? Losing market. And European countries, they're asking for discounts for natural gas supplies from Russia. Because Europeans see discounted LNG supplies from divergence from the from the American market. So natural gas prices are coming down due to shale revolution. So European countries are asking Russia to come down on LNG prices. So Russia, one way or another, losing revenues, money, market, right? Cutting prices, losing market, right? Losing customers. So Russia is trying to make up for this loss in the Asian market. That's how Russia looking east. When did Russia begin to look east? Long time ago. I mean, this trend, although shale revolution began 2009, this Russian looking east trend, the trend of Russia looking east, has been, I think it began since the early 1990s. Since the early 1990s. So Russia's orientation to Asia is not only recent phenomenon, but it has been a long-standing, like a foreign policy requirement for Russia. But the shale revolution is requiring Russia to move to Asian front more fiercely, right? There is no other way of moving to the Asian front for Russia. Now, which is natural, right? Natural to get the new market in the Asia. Asian market is growing, right? Korean economy is growing. Chinese economy is growing, right? Although Japan economic growth rate, although slowing down, huge market there, right? So it's quite natural for Russia to look east. But the problem is the second step for Russia. Then naturally there's a huge market, but there's a huge dilemma for Russia. There's a dilemma for Russia. Russian dilemma is, on the face of it, market is huge, but it's not easy to sell natural gas to China, Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. These are four big markets. China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan. CJKT. These are big natural gas consumers, big economies. CJKT. Particularly China. Chinese natural gas consumption will grow in a surprising rate. Everybody knows the Chinese natural gas consumption growth, right, will be enormous. If China consumes 100 now, right, 100 amount of natural gas, by 2030, the amount of Chinese natural gas consumption will be 400. That's how much China will be consuming, right? 4 times. 4 times. So Russia knows that, right? Russia knows that. But the problem is, Russian dilemma is there's a market, particularly Chinese market is hugely prospective, right? Hugely prospective. Korea, again, big market, very big market. In terms of like a structure of natural gas consumption, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, almost all LNG. Unlike in Europe. Unlike in Europe, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, 100% LNG. This is a dilemma for Russia. Why? Like I said, Russian tool for exports is pipelines, not LNG. Russia is very Russia has minimum LNG facilities. This is a dilemma, right? China, very small capacity of LNG, right? Very small capacity of LNG. And China is building pipelines to import currently, but small LNG facilities. So China, Korea, Japan, a little bit different structures there, right? So this is a dilemma for Russia. Huge market, but systems, energy systems, infrastructures are different from country to country. And particularly Korea, Japan, Taiwan, LNG, right, which is new to Russia. So this is a dilemma for Russia. So and one big dilemma for Russia. China is a big market, and China is building pipelines, which is a good news. China, Russia close, right? Very close in terms of distance, very close. So, I mean, just by looking at facts, Russia must export natural gas to China because they're neighbors, right? Pipeline export seem to be very natural between Russia and China. But one big dilemma for Russia in terms of China as a consumer is price. Price. Price is the reason why Russia, despite 2 decades of efforts to develop natural gas relations between Russia and China, because of this price problem, pricing gap. In other words, the price China is asking for, the price Russia is wanting to sell, huge gap. There's a huge gap between what China is asking for, right? What Russia is offering. There's a huge pricing gap. So Russia, China, they couldn't, narrow the gap over the last 2 decades, right? Because Russia was trying to sell natural gas for the same price as they were offering to European countries. China cannot accept that. China cannot accept that. So Russia-China natural gas agreements have failed and failed so many times over the last 20 years. So many times, despite many summits, exchanges of visits, right? Do you know how many visits both presidents, Russia and China, they exchange so many visits per year? There is, in the world, no other country can match Russia, China in terms of exchanging visits on at a president level, right? But this energy gap, they couldn't narrow the energy gap, right? Over the last 2 decades. And this was a dilemma for Russia. Now, shale impact on Russia-China natural gas debate, natural gas agreement. Shale, I think shale has a decisive impact on this Russia-China disagreement. Decisive impact. Impact is in a way that Russia in the beginning resisted, right? Russia in the beginning resisted the fact that natural gas market is changing. In other words, prices are coming down, right? Bubble. Shale gas is a bubble. That was the Russian reaction, right? But the impact of the U.S. shale gas, decisive impact on Russia-China, is that Russia began to realize, right? Realize the shale revolution. They began to accept it as a fact, right? That I think the recent Russian-Chinese agreement is paradoxical in a way that Russia knew there is no other way they come down on prices. Right? So the Russian-Chinese natural gas agreement was possible because Russia accepted Chinese price. That's number one reason. Russia accepted Chinese price. Russia had to accept Chinese price because of, right, changes from shale gas revolution. Natural gas prices changes. So in my opinion, I think that who benefits more? China benefits more than Russia. If you know the history of agreement between negotiations between Russia and China, clearly China benefits more. In a way that Russia accepts Chinese offer, Chinese price demands. Second aspect is that Russia does not have any money. That's the second aspect. Russia doesn't have any money. This goes back to the dilemma facing Russia in looking east, right? There's a huge market, right? Highly prospective market. The problem is the way Russia is integrated into the Asia-Pacific market, right? Becoming a member of the Asia-Pacific region, and Russia, China, Korea, China, Korea, Japan, and Russia, they exchange, economic, right, trades and energy. The only possible way of avenues of, trades between Russia on one hand, China, Korea, Japan is energy comes from Russia, right, and manufacturing products goes to Russia. This is the only way, because Russia doesn't have any, right, non-resource skills and technologies. So this is a huge disadvantage for Russia. So Russia always remain as a resource base for the Asia-Pacific market. Russia knows that. Russia knows that, and this is highly unhappy for Russia, particularly Russia-China relations. Russia knows that, right? So China funds every energy project in Russia, right? Russia just plays as a supplier. This is an unhappy relationship, right? This is not something Russia wants to have. Because this is like a African-Western relations, right? Over the long term, Russia doesn't benefit. So this Russia-China natural gas agreement, I think the bottom line is sort of a technically you can call it loan for natural gas deal. This is a typical loan for natural gas deal. In other words, China lends money to the Russian government. Then Russia receives the money, then extract, right, natural gas and provide it for China. That's the nature of the deal. Right. So I'm not sure whether how much Russia has to be happy about it. Right? Although Russia is promoting it to confront U.S. shale pressures, right? But the nature of the deal is not quite happy for Russia. Now, but at least I think some like a possibility open for Russia providing natural gas for the Chinese market. Now, next step is Korea, Japan, right? Korea, Japan. Whether or not Russia can develop natural gas market in Korea, right? That's the next question. But again, Korea poses different challenges than China. What new challenges Korea poses for Russia in terms of natural gas deal? Korean challenge is a little bit different from Chinese one. Chinese one is, like I said, pricing challenge, right? Number one, pricing challenge. Second, larger strategic challenge. In other words, Russia doesn't want to be serving as a raw materials base for China. Russia wants to have equal relations with China. More strategic dilemma for Russia. But Korean challenge is a little bit different from Chinese challenge. Korean challenge, the market clearly is smaller than China, right? Market is smaller, but still big market. Korea is still big market, right? It's a good market. Korea is a good market for Russia. But the Korean challenge is Korea depends almost 100% on LNG. That's the challenge for Russia. But Russia doesn't have LNG capacity, right? So to serve Korean market, Russia needs to build new pipelines. That's the Korean challenge. New pipelines to bring it all the way from East Siberia down to Korea. You need to build long pipeline. Thousands of pipelines, longest pipelines probably, right? That's the biggest challenge. And second challenge, pricing, pricing also becoming a challenge, more of a challenge for Korea because, again, after shale revolution, right? After shale revolution, Koreans begin to see, right? Prices are coming down. So Korea is more likely to ask for discounts from Russia. So that's the pricing aspect, even for Koreans. But once Russia, China agreed to some price, right? For Korea, pricing challenge is not much of a problem because price set in China must be transferred to Korea. So price will be set in Korea, in China, then applied to Korea. So again, pricing challenge in Korea might not be a regional one. Now, The more bigger challenge for Korea is North Korea problem. North Korea is blocking building of pipelines. That's the biggest, larger political strategic challenge for Korea. Different from market challenges, there is a huge political challenge. In other words, when Russia looks down to Korea, you need to build a pipeline from two directions. One is from East Siberia. The other one is from Sakhalin Island. You can build a pipeline from the island, Sakhalin, then link it to the continental pipeline, and move it down to Korea border, North Korean border. Then, right, passing North Korea. So two ways. There are two ways. But both ways, again, need to get the North Korean problem away to make it possible. Because you need to pass North Korea anyway. So the first time Russia looked into this puzzle, this issue was 2004 under Kim Dae-jung government. Kim Dae-jung government, Russian government, Korean government, and North Korean government, they together looked into this issue. Right? Looked at ways in which they can solve this problem, this dilemma. So Russia was proposing this idea, Korean government getting interested, North Korea also interested. Began in 2004 first. Then 2011, second time. August 2011, second time. Much more substantive idea came out, 2011. August 2011. So that at that time, again, Russia leading, then South Korean government, North Korean government, they also, both government got very serious about it, right? Very serious about it. Almost come to an agreement at that time, almost. But at that time, South Korean government and Russia, they didn't know about shale gas. August 2011, shale gas was not an issue at that time. So almost everything was prepared at that time, August 2011. Kim Jong-il, right? Russian president met Kim Jong-il, right? They came to some agreement. Then again, Gazprom came down to South Korea. They agreed to something, right? A lot of feasibility study, price, cost, everything was looked into at that time. But after Kim Jong-il died suddenly, right after they signed something. After Kim Jong-il died first, the North Korean regime changes, Kim Jong-un came in, there are a lot of chaos. Then shale gas hit Korea. So everything combined to make this Korean proposal dormant after that. Beginning 2012, no progress on this. So 2 times Korean discussion began, but couldn't move along. 2 times. But Russia, when Russia was proposing, Russia made a lot of preparations. Russia has had its own plan. In other words, plan for building pipelines from Siberia, East Siberia, and Sakhalin, so that Russia already was building. When Russia proposing, they were building this pipeline, so that pipelines were built from Sakhalin to Vladivostok, then the issue was from Vladivostok to Pyongyang, Seoul. This line was waiting, but Sakhalin to Vladivostok completed. Russian section completed at that time, right? Now, the pipeline this time between China and Russia is pipeline from East Siberia to Vladivostok. So Russia is connecting very different crisscrossing of pipelines from East Siberia, Sakhalin, many different sites, production sites, natural gas production sites, to Vladivostok. They link it to Vladivostok first, because Vladivostok is the collection point. So all the natural gas coming from different production sites collect in Vladivostok. Then from Vladivostok, then spread out to China, Korea, and LNG. Because Vladivostok is very convenient collection point, right? So Russia was doing their own homework, then proposing these plans to different countries. So now Russia-China is carefully planned. I think part of this carefully planned PNG sort of a blueprint. Japan is next turn. Japan, Russia and Japan. Again, Japan is a huge market. If you read newspapers, there are a lot of exchanges, contacts between Russia and China, Russia and Japan. Right? Japan must be surprised by this Russia-China pipeline agreement. So Japan follows with a lot of business proposals in the coming years. Right? Currently, Japan imports some LNG from Sakhalin. Some LNG. And Russia again will try to get Japan involved, right? Get Japan involved deeply in the natural gas production, right? Natural gas production, because that's Russia's main goal. Because natural gas production requires a lot of money. So they borrow from China, borrow from Japan, borrow from Korea. That's the Russian goals. But so far, China has just decided, according to the agreement, China has just decided to put some money, in other words, lend some money to the Russian government for extraction of natural gas. But Japan and Korea has not decided yet. So Russia, their strategy is to show this contract with China, show this to Korea, right? Look, you need to hurry up, otherwise everything goes to China. Telling Japan same thing, you need to hurry up, otherwise everything goes to China. That's Russian strategy. That's Russian strategy. But from Korean, from Japanese perspectives, we are still studying it. Because we have different options. We have, right? More recently, we have U.S. shale options. US LNG imports options. But we are not sure how cheap will the US LNG be. We are not sure. Right? That will be very critical. Price for potential US LNG exports will be very critical. We need to compare it to Russian prices. And second, there will be a huge natural gas capacity development from different countries by 2017. Australia, Africa, right? There are many other suppliers except the United States. So Korea, Japan, we are weighing these different options. Now, one thing that we need to consider in terms of our energy strategy, Korean energy strategy, or Korean energy security, is according to market logic, right? According to market logic, some are quite clear, right? Quite clear. Russia, despite the huge potential, right? Russia requires a lot of money, right? So cost-wise, Russian natural gas will be quite expensive, right? According to market logic. But natural gas still, energy strategy doesn't follow market logic alone. How much market logic China and Russia are following in getting this contract, historic contract, right, to fruition? How much market logic, right? Clearly, I think that some price gap narrowed, closed, but clearly Russia, China, they came to this agreement because of other larger strategic considerations. Right? Both Russia and China, they consider some larger strategic implications. I mean, right? They both hate America, right? That's the strategic consensus between Russia and China. Now, same goes to Korea. There are lots of things other than market logic. Russia is playing North Korean card here against Korean government, South Korean government, telling South Korea, you need to build, right, Korean pipeline because it'll help resolve Korean conflicts. That's Russian argument. Pipeline is not just about pipeline. Through pipeline, Korean peace process will be promoted. That's Russian card. So I think the Korean government, yes, clearly they will take these strategic considerations, right? Even if American LNG is cheaper, right? Korea might have to buy some Russian natural gas because of this North Korean card Russia is playing. That's energy politics. And in terms of security, energy security, Korea is solely dependent on LNG. Most other options are LNG. We need to have a balance between PNG and LNG. So that's what Russia can contribute to Korean energy security as a PNG supplier. We need some PNG portion. That's second, right, advantage of Russia. Japan, again, Japanese strategy is also quite very complex, complicated. The some years ago, when the U.S. shale gas revolution just began, Japan was very excited about U.S. shale gas exports. And 20% of U.S. shale gas exports, Japan will have 20% of it. Right? But now, more recent trend in Japanese foreign policy is quite different from this. In other words, the peace proposal Japan was making to North Korea, right? You know that. This is highly debated in the Korean media why Japan is like posing some charm offensive to North Korea, right? And North Korea is reciprocating to these Japanese, right, gestures. In other words, North Korea saying to the Japanese government that we can release detained, right, Japanese. So what's going on? I mean, we are just scratching our head, right? What's going on between North Korea and Japan, right? On the other hand, Japan is also making some gestures to Russia. We need to get to the bottom of that, right? Why Japan is doing that, right? Because there are several political dilemmas between Russia and Japan, which blocking energy deals. Those are territorial disputes, right? There are territorial disputes between Russia and Japan, right? There are 4 islands in dispute between Russia and China, between Russia and Japan. That sort of blocks huge energy deals between Russia and Japan. So you need to keep track of what's going on between Russia and Japan over these disputed territories, right? Northern territories, so to speak, between Russia and Japan. I think it's clearly linked to Russia-China rapprochement, one hand, and Russia-Japanese relations. Right? So this is energy politics. This is energy politics. I think I have answered many of these questions raised. So you need to follow up on these points I have made in this class. Then if you want to write an essay on this, please do so. All right. Yeah, this is another way of saying hello, thank you. This has been a successful, right, semester. I'm quite happy that I have concluded this book with energy discussions, which means that your further study, right? I have opened up many avenues, right? Different avenues, right? Development, studies, trade, finance. Those are exciting topics. Dollar issue, right? And energy. Russia, China, Asian energy. This is so interesting area of study. Asian energy. Russia on one hand, China, Korea, Japan. So interesting area. This is an area where Koreans can excel in the U.S. market, U.S. academic market. This is an area, as a Korean scholar or Korean student, if you go to the United States, this is an area that you can do better than Americans, these issues. And these issues, in terms of policy, in terms of business, very important issue for America. Many Americans know that this is so important issue. So if you like specialize in this, whatever you do as a graduate student in the United States, very prospective area of focus for many of you. And dollar issue, yeah, it's an exciting area, but very hard to get in, right? Because the global dollar issue, highly competitive market, right? And development issue, again, highly competitive market, long-standing topic, right? So you need to strategize how you can, right, excel compared to other competitors. So you need to have some strategy. When you graduate and go out on the market as a graduate student or researcher, you need to strategize. Okay, so thank you and good luck on your exam. Write good essays. Right? Bye-bye.
Thank you.